My name's Mel Gray and I live and work here on the unceded lands of the Turrbagah people of the Wiradjuri Nation here in Dubbo. But I'm not from here, I'm from Grafton on the north coast of New South Wales. I was raised on a vegetable farm on Carr's Peninsula, which is basically a spit of flood mud between the Clarence River and Carr's Creek. When flood used to come, we used to get maybe 2 days notice. We'd have to pack up the whole farm. Sometimes we'd have to pack up the whole house. And I remember back in my childhood thinking about those days. They were the most fun days, playing in the boats, around the house, knocking around on the farm. And when the flood waters went down, they left this thick, rich, incredible layer of silt, which became this fertile loam which my parents had the privilege of growing food in for over 30 years. And what those floods did in that valley was kickstart life. The fish got all their triggers to breed and migrate. The seafood down at Yamba, the prawns, snapper and all that beautiful flathead, all of that cornucopia, abundance of seafood and fertility in that valley and all the valleys comes from those huge big floods that used to come down the river. So fast forward after we've left home and Mum and Dad move further west until they end up managing sheep stations at Tilpa on the Darling River. I remember on one trip home, the fax machine used to go off every morning. Oh, there's a flood coming, beep, beep. You get weeks of warning out west. It's not like on the coast. So, okay, XYZ, the flood's coming and this is what to look out for, righto. So we're getting really excited. We want to see the mighty Darling in flood. Can't wait to see those big wide floodplains covered a sea of water, those ephemeral lakes that have just been dry basins all the time that we've been there. We can't wait to see them full of water. We've heard stories about our predecessors water skiing on them. So anyway, the date's getting closer now. Beep, 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 fax machine goes off every day, warning, flood coming. And one day the faxes just stopped and the water level, the low water level in the Darling, it never rose. It wasn't a small flood. It never rose at all. This is my mum. She's on a four-wheel motorbike there on the dry bed of the Darling River. This is about 2004. This is an ecological disaster. This is 3.5 kilometres of dry riverbed of a river that historically never dried up. It didn't happen. This is a man-made ecological catastrophe. Floodplain harvesting can take, in some cases, it can take entire events. Sure, it can't catch a massive, huge flood like we've seen this year, 2021, but it can take a lot of minor events. It can take whole tributary events. Floodplain harvesting is enormous. So here in the Macquarie, you often hear from ye old timies downstream that the Macquarie marshes gets too much water and all the trees are drowning because they get too much water. Even our politicians try and tell us that. But the fact of the matter is that the Macquarie marshes are declining very rapidly because a vast amount of volumes of water that are taken upstream. And a lot of that water, floodplain harvested water, is actually in the environment's water that has been taken, stolen illegally upstream of the marshes. Now there should be no floodplain harvesting licensed in the Macquarie, none at all. That's what the water sharing plan says, zippo, and that's the volume that should be licensed. If floodplain harvesting is to be brought under the 94-95 level of take, then the Macquarie's contribution towards that cap is zero. So imagine our surprise when the government comes along and announces that all floodplain harvesting take in the Macquarie is going to be licensed. It's all going to be under the cap, they say. It's all going to be under the SDL. Well, this sustainable diversion limit, this SDL, it is an S. It's not sustainable. It's been determined to be way too high. Far too much water can be taken out of this poor old river. And licensing that full historic take of floodplain harvesting is insulting. It's wrong. It's illegal. It has to be.